It's been over a month since I've made some personal vlogs here, so I figure it's time to take a little bit of break from the regular format of my YouTube channel and put out a few more personal vlogs here. And here we are up to number 30 here. Call it back daylight savings time. Why in 2019 here? Well, fall week, if you've been feeling a little extra groggy here, and you could say this personal vlog is kind of part 2 of personal vlog number 10, where I ranted about time change going back to standard time. As we finally get used to being back on standard time, next thing you know, it's time to change clocks to go back to daylight time. Daylight saving time is called. Everyone mispronounces it as daylight savings time, but the official name is daylight saving time. I mean, I get why the original practice was put into place, to save coal. It was first implemented in the First World War here, but last I checked, that ended over 100 years ago, or just over 100 years ago, in the Armistice Agreement instead. But also, it was brought back, in the Second World War. I mean, the idea also first came to be when people wanted to save, lighting candles, and another guy wanted to, extra time to collect bugs, believe it or not. I mean, you can look all over the internet, and there's various videos on this whole practice. And the thing is, back in the 100 years ago, or even 50 years ago, when we were in a more regimented society, where people were up and doing activities all at the same time, and done at the end of the day. I mean, this is definitely not the case anymore. Here we are in 2019, where we live in a 24/7 world here. Heck, you can go to McDonald's at any time to grab an Egg McMuffin around the clock, for example. But now people are busier than ever, running around more than ever, and even more sleep deprived ever, because we're trying to get ahead here, when in fact it seems like we work harder and get further behind here. But throwing in these time changes is definitely makes matters even worse here. I mean, yeah, we're only talking about an hour here, but my personal take is I think we should only be changing the clocks when you travel. I mean, everyone says, well, now the sun's out later. Well, yeah, because we shift the hours here, but that also means the sun comes out later. I mean, yeah, it might come in handy for some people, but not necessarily for someone like me, who has to be up at 4 or 5 in the morning for work, and it's almost more of a nuisance when the sun's out even later in the summer there, when you gotta be in bed early for work on a work day. But I personally think we should definitely stay on standard time, just because that was the established time there. But also the fact that the other solution would be is to maybe shift the operating hours here. I mean, everyone who says they should stay on daylight time year round because we spend much of the year on daylight time, while the same people that say, well, it's nice that the sun's out later in summer, you realize that if we stayed on daylight time, especially being this far up from the equator here, the sun isn't going to rise to about 9:45, when the solstice is on in December there. And are you going to want that? And I mean, also the fact that, it's when these sudden changes where, for example, I go to work early in the morning, just before the time change, you start seeing the sun just rising. And then when you shift it over an hour, it's darker. And that's when you get that sudden change. That's why you get, like, accidents, and then people are already, extra groggy there. And then the fact that when you go back, I mean, the sun sets at, 4:30 at the solstice here. Well, I mean, when you go back in November there, it goes from like 6 to 5, which, there's nothing much you can do, being where I am here in Canada, Calgary, Alberta, that you're going to get a huge variation in daylight. There's nothing you can do about that. I mean, that's pretty much why the time changes happen further away from the equator, because if you live close to the equator, you get less variation in the time there. I mean, when time goes from 12 hours at the equinox, hence why it's named equinox, going towards summer there, where you get to the point where you have 16 hours of daylight and 8 hours of dark, and then it goes in reverse, reciprocated in December there. So I mean, there's nothing you can do, but I mean, it just screws up everybody's time, their circadian rhythm, it's called, where you're used to being up and down at the same time every day. But it's funny how every year you always get all these big news outlets and governments, all they do is, they talk about, but then nothing happens here. But I just still feel that, we should definitely stay on standard time year round, and then, if you need to, just adjust the operating hours of school and work, certain parts of the year, so that you're still most productive in the daylight time. I mean, in the summer, you're almost more inclined to want to get up earlier anyway, because the sun's already out, and the sun's still up fairly late, if it's 9, 10 o'clock. I mean, the other piece of why I think we should stay on standard time is, well, for example, Arizona stays on standard time year-round because, well, rumor has it gets hot there in the summer. And those people there aren't going to want the sun out even later when it's, 40-plus degrees Celsius or over 110 degrees Fahrenheit there. And then with climate change now happening, summer seems to get hotter every year. That, all this energy savings, people are not going to want to spend as much time outside if it's hot. So then they go inside and blast their AC. So, all this energy savings is definitely negligible now. But, it's like here we are in 2019, and why the heck do we still do it when we live more in a 24/7 hour world here compared to back then when everything was a lot more regimented. But I think the only way that this change will ever happen is if, I think here in North America, it'd have to be Congress in the United States that has to totally agree, because likely what happens if they agreed, then likely we're going to follow suit, and a lot of North America will follow suit. It seems to be up to every jurisdiction, and that's where you get all this debate that never seems to happen. And I know that there was debate there last year, and maybe some people at the end of the day just decided, I'll just take the little inconvenience. But Alberta was planning on there for a while, even though they, our current government, which we're up to an election here pretty soon, or unofficially, but they were talking about having their own time zone. And thing is, we would be staying on Central Time, which I still feel we're too far west from the Central Time Zone. If BC still follows suit, there'd be a 2-hour time change, and that would definitely screw things up here. But I think the only way we ever get rid of this practice if one government, when I say Congress, because they're going to be the biggest economy, especially Canada and Mexico, who also follow the daylight saving, would follow suit just to stay in sync there. And also the fact, there used to be a time where you went, it's always spring forward, fall back. But there was a time when it first was implemented. It was first happened the last Saturday or Sunday in April, and then when you spring forward, and then the last Sunday in October you fall back, and then eventually they changed it so that it was still you fall back last Sunday in October, and then you spring forward first Sunday in April. And then it was that energy act that happened in 2005 during the Bush administration, that then they moved it to the second Sunday of March where we spring forward, and then the first Sunday in November where we fall back. Well, maybe down in most of the states there where they have less variation in daylight saving or daylight hours fluctuating, and even then there's some cases where it doesn't work because it happens so early in the year and happens so late that that's where you get that sudden darkness when the time change happens. And another thing too is that up here in Alberta, we're a lot farther north than we are, to much of the Canadian population there, and Southern Ontario and Quebec there, and they say energy savings don't happen too because Albertans on average are actually up a lot earlier than people in Ontario there, and there was actually facts that backed it up that we don't save energy because when it's still dark here, you still got to turn on the lights to do your business and before you go to work, and still dark there. But we're at the point now where I think this is just a senseless act that we do in society where it is right now. We're a lot busier, more active than 24/7 there. But what's your take about this time change thing? Is it time to just get rid of it altogether and just agree on a time and stick with it and just deal with the fact that in some parts of the world that you are going to get a big variation in daylight hours throughout the year. Heck, if you're at the poles there, you go months without daylight or darkness. So what is your take? That's just my personal blog, my quick little rant about here we are in 2019 and we're still doing something that we've always been done 100 years ago, where it doesn't really apply anymore on why the heck we do this in the first place. But it is what it is. So anyway, if you enjoy everything I do on my YouTube channel here, just make sure you hit like, subscribe, and all my personal vlogs are in this playlist, and it's gone in each order they come. Here we are up to number 30 here, and there's still many more to come, and this is where I just talk about whatever's on my mind here and do a little storytelling here. So anyway, as I always say, I'll see you in the next video.